live, and we'll give it a few beats to let us go live as we're going to do the AFC North today, Bloom. That means we get to talk about Pittsburgh. That means we get to get upset about Pittsburgh. Although I don't know. We'll get to those pesky Steelers in just a little bit, but let's fire this thing up as we go around the National Football League. 3, 2, 1. Well, Baltimore continues to get great and stay great, and that's a problem if you are another team in the AFC North. It is the preseason watch list. It's the Audible, Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom going 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you should give a damn about, we talk about right here on this show. Of course, starting out with those Baltimore Ravens, starting out with Lamar Jackson, Mr. Madden cover himself, and everything that he can continue to do, Bloom. One of the most dangerous players in the league, one of the highest rated fantasy players that you want to pick up because of that rushing ability, because he's better as a passer than some people think, and because this team added more talent around him, certainly more speed at the wide receiver position that we will get to, including another running back as well that will help out that group. But it's all about Lamar Jackson to kick things off in this episode.
Yes, Ethan, to not anger our fellow Steelers fans, we can't speak too glowingly about the Ravens. But I think when Ozzy's one of his parting shots, Lamar Jackson, we said, oh, maybe some part of me is going to root for this team, even though they're the mortal enemies. And they exploded. I mean, it was a breakthrough year, but what an empty breakthrough year because of how it ended. So they're still chasing the Chiefs, This is, in some ways, it's good for an organization like the Ravens. So, Cease, another thing, and I'm not going to ask you to comment on this directly because of everything sensitive, but Peter King commented on this. It just intuitively makes sense. The good organizations, the way the organizations handle any decision tree is a good indicator of how they're going to handle managing coronavirus. So the good organizations, the organizations with continuity, are the organizations that we assume are going to do well, both with the lack of preparation this year, the different schedule, the different calendar, and keeping them from being coronavirus outbreaks and other things that can interrupt the season. So we like the Ravens, right? We can probably make a short list of like 8 or 10 organizations that we'd say the way they run the organization is a good outward indicator. And Ravens are certainly on that list. So you like the idea of investing in Ravens, but they got to get over the hump this year. It is Wednesday. You lost Marshall Yonda, Hall of Famer, Cease?
Yeah,
Hall of Famer. Mm-hmm. The center, Dan Skura, had a terrible leg injury last year. Sounds good, but again, one of the things we're going to be watching, speaking of preseason watch list, maybe this year more than ever, is how are these injured players that had surgery in the offseason, looking as they ramp back up in their conditioning. What does Lamar Jackson do for an encore? What does this offense do as an encore? It can get better, right? I mean, Lamar Jackson can get better in his third year. You add speed at the running back position. You add speed at slot receiver. Hopefully, Marquise Brown can make the impact that they wanted when they took him in the first round, as he wasn't 100%. So this offense can absolutely get better. And the Ravens weren't challenged in a lot of the games. We saw what kind of numbers Lamar Jackson could put up against the Titans when he had to play catch-up football. So if the Ravens as a team step back, that could mean even bigger numbers for Lamar Jackson. I'm totally fine with Lamar Jackson as your second-round pick or maybe even your late first-round pick. I think we still are just scratching the surface of what he can be as a football player, which in turn translates to what he can be as a fantasy football player. And yes, regression. Look, he can regress 10, 15% from last year's numbers and still be, along with Patrick Mahomes, well ahead of the pack at quarterback. So don't let anybody tell you using an early pick on Lamar Jackson is a bad idea. No,
don't let anyone tell you that, because he's the type of guy that could win your league in 1 week, and especially if that happens to be championship week with everything that he can do and all the new weapons around him. So regression, we'd have to see him peak first, Bloom.
Right, exactly. The Chase Stewart concept of the true mean. Do we know? Yes, everybody regresses to the mean, but everybody's mean is different. And we don't know Lamar Jackson's mean yet. Maybe he'll run not quite as much, but maybe this offense will be more efficient. It certainly is a more difficult offense to defend when we start talking about the players they have at the skill positions.
Yeah, behind him, RG3, Trace McSorley, not a ton to see there, although I've always been interested in McSorley in this system because this is a team that says, what do you do well? Okay, now let's do that. McSorley, not fantastic as a passer at all, but certainly athletic. So, crazy deep dynasty. I'll keep watching.
Certainly RG3 as if we expect, some quarterbacks to miss time, if Lamar Jackson misses time because of coronavirus or otherwise, Robert Griffin III, because of his running ability, would be interesting. And he fits well in terms of this offense, asking defenses to play 11-on-11 football. But I agree. And McSorley continuing that trend. Khalil Tate got cut by the Eagles this week, Cecil, So we continue to watch these quarterbacks that have multiple applications.
Yeah, and continue to watch these players that are about the 80th on the roster, 85th, right, that'll get cut due to cutting down camp rosters. Tate he'll latch on somewhere, perhaps. So, and they were having him as a wide receiver, but that's for our Eagles show. For our Ravens show, they get J.K. Dobbins. I mean, we can talk Mark Ingram. Everybody already knows everything about Mark Ingram, though, and what he can do, and Gus Edwards, and we can fire up the hype train. Not very many people on it as it used to be with Justice Hill because of J.K. Dobbins. And just like we said yesterday with DeAndre Swift, there's a cluster of running backs at the top, and whoever your favorite was your favorite, right? J.K. Dobbins, incredibly versatile as a 3-down back, doesn't need to come off the field, very natural, fluid. He's got some power. He's got some moves. He's got vision. And again, he's a fantastic receiver out of the backfield. Now you add that guy to this team. Again, the Steelers fan in me, Bloom, during the draft was like, it's just not fair. It's just not fair.
Yes, it is not fair. Steelers should have taken him instead of Chase Claypool. Actually, the Eagles were looking at taking him instead of Jalen Hurts. But as usual, everything falls to the Ravens. Everything breaks the Ravens' way on draft day. This is a difficult backfield to discern for fantasy because of the way that it's going to be split between probably 3 players. Mark Ingram, and did this piece again. It's really interesting to look at 2019 ADP and look at current ADP and say, does that make sense? Because Mark Ingram was about a 4th-round pick last year. We didn't really know how he was going to perform in the Ravens offense. I think we thought maybe Justice Hill might challenge him at some point. Remember, we hadn't completely embraced the idea that the Ravens offense was going to be one of the best offenses in the league yet. And now, fast forward, they draft J.K. Dobbins, still a 4th-round pick. So if we see, and this was not a high volume running game because of Lamar Jackson and the number of carries that he got. So if we see Mark Ingram not get to the, say, 13 to 15 touch threshold, and he had, I think, 5 receiving touchdowns last year too, then it's a slippery slope for Ingram if J.K. Dobbins splits that work as opposed to Gus Edwards and Justice Hill being more of a change of pace or spelling Ingram. So probably if Dobbins is going later than Ingram, I would rather gamble on Dobbins' upside because as good as Ingram is, and I think what the things that we underestimate about Ingram, Cease, and you can talk about this because of your knowledge of teams behind the scenes, when you look at the Ravens roster last year, who was that veteran? Who was that guy that had been there that the rest of the team, a young team, other than Marshall Yanda on the line, could look to? I think Mark Ingram actually was a really good stabilizing force for that team, although when the ship be sinking during the playoffs, maybe they needed, Ray Lewis back or something like that. So Ingram's still going to have a role on this team, but where Ingram was getting to the 2nd and 3rd level and breaking runs for 10 or 15 or 20 yards, Dobbins can take them all the way. And it may well be that if Dobbins gets 8 to 10 carries and a few catches a game, then he pays off at ADP because of how much stress this offense puts on defenses. Except for the Steelers, because they know you just blitz Lamar and make him make decisions early. So if Dobbins is going after Ingram, Dobbins is the better pick. It may well be that unless this is a hyper efficient running game, they're not going to yield someone week to week that you can count on. Gus Edwards is still really good too. I'm going to be watching Gus Edwards on his next team. Justice Hill has speed, but he didn't really click in this offense last year. And I think there's a tiny chance that he could be on the fringe of the roster because they drafted Dobbins. I will be interested to see where he lands. Great running game. For Dynasty, you have to love Dobbins because he gets to be a part of this offense. through the prime of his career. We'll see if he takes off this year.
Well, Brandon brings it up in our chat room, reacting to me and saying that Ingram is solid, proven he can hold up. And that's the thing with Dobbins. It's the high quality touches, the high value touches. He's not going to get the number of touches because Ingram should stay healthy and do his Ingram things, but it's the quality of those touches that Dobbins is going to get, the quality of those receptions, and then just what the defense on the pecking order. It's Lamar Jackson and everybody else. And you throw in Dobbins on the field, and he's going to be below that. Defenses aren't going to be solely focused on that. So he's going to be able to take advantage of some really choice. I don't think anyone uses that word anymore, Bloom. Some choice situations for Dobbins. It's the quality of the touches, not the quantity.
Yeah. Is one carry in this offense worth 2 carries in Jacksonville's offense, or 3 carries in Jacksonville's offense?
Yeah.
Right. So that's a concept to think about. I definitely think that running back carries are worth the most in this offense.
They are worth the most. Now, as we went through, you want Gus Edwards or Justice Hills, you want to say any more?
Yeah.
I mean,
no, just good talents. I mean, if this is a season that decimates depth and forces third, fourth string running backs into the lineup. I mean, Gus Edwards, the number 1 running back for this team, or Justice Hill, the number 1 running back for this team, we are projecting in the top 10 that week.
Yep. No doubt. And no doubt this running game is strong. No doubt they've got some talent at the wide receiver position, but can they stay healthy? Can they make that impact, especially a certain rookie with a fantastic name? We'll get to Devin Duvernay in just a little bit, but you teased it, Bloom, industry term, about Marquise Brown. Hollywood was on the shelf last year as a rookie and wasn't effective except for one game, whatever the number was. Is this the year that he gets it? Obviously, incredible talent. Obviously, one of those guys that could take a short pass, turn it into a long gain, and helping out Lamar Jackson. Marquise Brown would be priority number 1, top of the list when we talk wide receivers.
And this is another picture. See, there's going to be a theme in the preseason watch list this year that people are going to get sick of real quick. Wide receiver value everywhere. What's Marquise Brown? 6th, 7th round pick? Oh, man, are you kidding me? These targets, he's going to get the deep targets against teams that are crowding the box, teams that are worried about Lamar Jackson in the running game, teams that are worried about Mark Andrews. We'll talk about that. So you're stressing defenses in all these directions. Marquise Brown is good. Okay. Cease. Marquise Brown or Henry Ruggs, who was a more polished, developed wide receiver at the moment they entered the draft?
Marquise Brown.
Right. I mean, he's not just a speed guy, okay? He's not just to go that way fast and outrun everybody. He can make plays at the catch point. He can do a lot of things after the catch. If he is healthy, and the other side of this is this going to be the story of Marquise Brown's career? When he's healthy, kind of like Deshaun Jackson, who he's got some comparisons to. A lot of people point to wide receivers under this weight, have trouble making a sustained impact. Okay, but in redraft, we're just looking at this year, and Marquise Brown, 6th, 7th round, especially in best ball leagues. I mean, this is a no-brainer. We haven't seen the best of what he can do yet, and it could add a dimension of this offense. The Ravens had the most underwhelming play at wide receiver in the league last year. If they just get Brown and one other good contributor at wide receiver, again, this offense becomes very difficult to stop.
Yeah, and Marquise Brown does a great job varying his speed. Like, he toys with people before he even catches the ball. He'll toy with defenders like, this is how fast I am. No, it's not. Yep. And he'll have that extra gear. Like, he'll vary his route speed. He does a fantastic job. And Bloom, you mentioned in redraft, it's all about this year. It's my first opportunity to say windows. In redraft, it's just a window. If I get Marquise Brown at 100% of Marquise Brown, right? This is the great, look at this guy, he's taking the league by storm, and I get that for a month, great. If I get it for 2 months, fantastic. But that's the windows that we're talking about. So it's not even a year per se. It's like, can I get that at the right time in my league?
Yeah, and speaking of the right time, Cease, Baltimore starts out with Cleveland, Houston, Kansas City, Washington, Cincinnati.
Aye.
So whether it's a shootout with Houston or Kansas City, or Cleveland's corners, Washington's corners, Cincinnati's corners, Cincinnati did sign a bunch of corners. It's going to be fun to see what this offense does as a launching pad of September.
Yeah, let's talk about the res. We kind of almost have to cluster everyone because Miles Boykin is there, and we know with the speed, the ball tracking ability. Okay, we've seen it. Willie Snead and the old man still kicking around. Devin Duvernay is the most exciting to me. Although Chris Moore, Jaleel Scott, remember we were having that Alan Lazard talk. It's like, remember that year when big wide receivers just didn't go off the board? James Prochet. I mean, my God, they've got quite the interesting group of receivers, and it seems like each one does everything a little bit different. And you mentioned with Justice Hill, like, at the end of the bench there. To me, that's Willie Snead because these other guys are much more interesting. Snead's got that experience, though, and maybe in COVID-19 where there's no camp and no practice and no whatever, no preseason, maybe these more experienced guys can, cling on and then do something with it. But, man, I'm really excited about Duvernay. Again, it's one of those things when the Ravens picked him up, I was like, damn it. Of course, the Ravens had to get Devin Duvernay.
Well, they had 2 second-round picks, 2 third-round picks, and 2 fourth-round picks to open the draft. And you just knew that's an unfair advantage for a team that was one of the best teams in the league in the previous year. Miles Boykin has all kinds of physical ability. If it was a typical year, we'd be talking about him maybe making that second-year leap, game slowing down for him. But maybe Lamar Jackson's outside throwing ability, and let's make that clear, Lamar Jackson to the middle of the field is a lot better than Lamar Jackson outside the hashes. So we still like Marquise Brown, but asking him to make Marquise Brown and Miles Boykin fantasy relevant, that's a little rough. But if Brown can't stay healthy, if your stance on Brown is too light, too small, can't stay healthy, then you should be interested in Miles Boykin and have him on the short list of your waiver wire watch list. As you said, Willie Snead, undrafted free agent, made good, and certainly somebody in his Baltimore chapter of his career has leveled things off after it looked like he was really headed for big things in New Orleans. Maybe his familiarity and chemistry with Lamar Jackson helps him hold off Devin Duvernay. And for those of you that listen to the shows in the offseason, you've heard me say this already. Duvernay is an unbelievable fit for this team, right? Loves to block, has a running back mentality, deep speed from the slot. So Duvernay, now how do you have Marquise Brown speed on the outside, Duvernay speed from the slot, Mark Andrews, athletic, very high quality receiving tight end, putting downfield stress, but then you also have Lamar Jackson and the running game. How do you defend this offense? How do you do that? So Duvernay can be one of those guys that catches 30 or 40 passes, but for 700 yards.
All right.
Because he's going to be in that matchup. And he can win at the catch point too. Duvernay is not your classic shifty slot receiver who's going to shake you in the short range, like a Cole Beasley or a KJ Hills like that coming out of Ohio State this year. No, he's just going to land chunk plays. He's just going to run away from his guy, and that is going to be fun to watch. And then she said there's like everybody else, right? Chris Moore probably has an edge to make the team because of his special teams contributions. Jaleel Scott, New Mexico State, big receiver, reminds me of Ramses Barden, and which is not necessarily a good thing where he doesn't necessarily use his size to win. This is kind of his make or break year to make the roster because they bring in James Prochet who catches everything, another slot receiver. I still like Antoine Wesley out of Texas Tech, another long drink of water who's got some skills. So they have some interesting guys fighting for those last few spots, but certainly. And by the way, the other Mike Thomas is on their roster now. Remember him? Lots of interesting talents, but speed, and that's what is going to matter on Sundays when you have to actually slow this offense down.
You know what James Prochet has? Electric toes. That's right. That's right. Here we go again. Now we got to talk about Mandrew. All right. Love the fact that Mandrew has come through and made those big plays for this team. Of course, Hayden Hurst. Moving on, we'll get to him later when we talk about Atlanta. But when you look at Mandrew, it's same as it ever was. Let's do it up. And now with more talent around, it's like, okay, you thought you had it figured out, right? Try to stuff the ground game, pressure Lamar Jackson, and contain Mark Andrews. Now with all this extra talent, it's like, okay, Mandrew's going to run wild and make a run at that top tight end spot.
Yeah, and he's going ahead of Zach Ertz in some drafts. The question is, without Hayden Hurst here, how much does that give Andrews? And hey, tight end, every target matters, right? We're already dealing with small target loads. And what Mark Andrews does with the targets he gets. He maximizes them. Again, are you really going to go into a game saying, well, we have to stop Mark Andrews? No. As good as Mark Andrews has been, I mean, maybe you say because Lamar Jackson's so comfortable throwing to him, but I think the first thing you probably have to take away is the running game and get your defense prepared for that. And then you have to deal with the speed of Marquise Brown and then Mark Andrews. So, yeah, Mark Andrews could easily, now remember, he was on and off the injury report a lot last year. So it's one of those situations where maybe some of those injuries where we were watching things up until game time or watching his practice participation, if some of those slow him down a little more, maybe that's a problem. But otherwise, it's easy to make the case for Mark Andrews as maybe joining Kelsey and Kittle as this year goes on, because Lamar Jackson was so accurate, so on time throwing to Mark Andrews. It was a thing of beauty, except, of course, when facing the Steelers.
You know who misses Mandrew the most?
Baker Mayfield.
That's right. I don't think Austin Hooper was going to make that up, but we'll get to that in a couple of more episodes. But it is the preseason watch list here on the Audible. Do you want to talk about Nick Boyle?
Well, I mean, he's a blocker. He's more of that extra tackle. But if Andrews gets hurt, he becomes interesting. If the bar to tight end one fantasy production, top 10, top 12 fantasy production is very low. So if Andrews misses a game, Cecil will probably project Boyle to have a decent shot at scoring a touchdown.
To that, I would say double true. So it's 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about here on the preseason watch list, it is the Audible, and it is time to discuss how much Joe Burrow could impact the Cincinnati Bengals. It might be way more than you think. Get to that next. I forgot to tell you I have a radio spot at 10:45, but we should be able to get there plenty easy. So no hurry, no rush. And everyone sees how the sausage is made now. So there we go. In 3, 2, and 1. Joe Burrow is fantastic and amazing, and what a talent. And his pass placement, its accuracy upon accuracy, he can do it all, but can he help lead the Bengals out of the doldrums that they've been in for years and years and years? It is the preseason watch list here on the Audible. Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom, 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on this show. You heard it right. It's time to talk Cincinnati, and that means Joe Burrow, Bloom. Now, always from the lemon twist, always from the fantasy perspective with Joe Burrow, but there's also a football perspective that is incredibly important, obviously, and to me, maybe more interesting than fantasy for now. Can you change my mind?
Yeah, of course. I mean, how many years running? Well, rookie quarterbacks. And maybe it goes back to Cam Newton, Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III. It's not too much for rookie quarterbacks Daniel Jones had some fantasy value last year. It's not difficult to picture rookie quarterbacks, especially when you have Joe Burrow with running ability. And, taking a step back, absolutely for the Bengals, you want to look at this as the dawning of a new era. They had some things break their way finally, where when this bottom fell out of their season, they fell right into Joe Burrow, an Ohio kid and somebody who turned around. I mean, look, LSU wasn't exactly languishing, so maybe turned around isn't the right word, but elevated them to have one of the greatest seasons in college football history.
Right.
And he just radiates that calm. He's in the eye of the storm. He's a leader. He brought together a lot of different kinds of personalities at LSU, and everybody pulled together, and they transcended. We also got to remember with the Bengals, they're getting Jonah Williams back, so it's like getting an extra first-round pick this year. Zach Taylor, Brian Callahan, some offensive minds. They actually spent in free agency this year, Cease. DJ Reader, Trey Waynes. We're not used to seeing this whenever the Bengals are maybe trying to become a winning franchise and not just treading water without old Marvin Lewis. So absolutely, offensive line an issue. LSU had a pretty good offensive line last year, but great skill players around him, some good offensive minds. I think they're going to be aggressive. Go back to week 1 against Seattle. And that's the question too, was Andy Dalton holding back this offense at this point? Dalton probably underrated, honestly, based on perception, but still Joe Burrow can offer a lot, making plays outside of structure, incredibly accurate, just destroyed accuracy records in the NCAA record books, which is, and not, I've talked about this before, Cease, but what was the record before? Like Phillip Rivers, 73% or something like that.
Right.
So, and what was Burrow on 78% last year?
Yeah.
Something like that. So that 5% is like, if you're already hyper accurate and executing well and making good decisions, then those extra completions are difficult completions. Those are completions that great college quarterbacks weren't making, that he was making last year. So I'm excited to see what Burrow can do, and he can absolutely elevate this entire offense.
And Joe Burrow was doing it with some downfield throws as well.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Justin Jefferson cleaning up on the slot. We talked about that with Minnesota. It's like 109 of 111 receptions were from the slot. But these were a higher degree of difficulty than the guy who's just going to do air raid, our normal, quote unquote air raid, right? And just throw around and make all those easy throws to Mark Andrew.
Yeah.
It's always very interesting. It was like when, and not necessarily like, because I never thought Johnny Manziel could play, but I remember watching Johnny Manziel and he just throw it up to Mike Evans. It's like he's not doing anything.
Right.
Mike Evans is doing everything. So I never thought that about Baker, but it is interesting to reflect and to note. But let's talk more about Burrow, because he's got the support of a ground game. He's got great receivers around him. Bloom, that defense might not be where it needs to be. And from a fantasy angle, that's going to help Burrow.
Yeah, you love it. I mean, this is going to be, Joe go in there and keep this team in the game. The defense, there's some quality players up front. They have a new look secondary. And that's the other thing we're always looking at, right? When there's change, when there's turnover, there's going to be a rockier transition period than there has been in the past. So absolutely, that could get them into high-scoring games. If your plan at quarterback is, I'm going to take Joe Burrow as like the 15th quarterback off the board, like I'm going to watch everyone get their starter and a few teams take their backup, and then I'm going to take Joe Burrow, I'm not going to talk you out of that.
Not going to talk you out of that, and, well, I'm not going to talk you into talking about Ryan Finley or Jake Dolgala.
Right.
Unless you want to.
Joe Burrow, please stay healthy. Please stay healthy. Colin Kaepernick, maybe this is a place he could sign. I mean, we're still waiting to see if he could sign somewhere. This could be a team that could benefit from an upgrade at backup quarterback.
Joe Mixon is fantastic as a runner, fantastic as a receiver, and can be the centerpiece of this offense. Do you believe that Zach Taylor will be a little bit conservative, as much as he can be, in terms of just feeding Mixon as much as possible, keep it simple for the rookie? Because I think that's what they're going to try, Bloom. They're going to try to do that, and then the defense is going to give up 17 points in the first quarter, and then it's Joe Burrow time. So what does that mean for Mixon this year? Always kind of solid, always kind of steady when you look at his fantasy production.
Well, see, so we were to make a list of the running backs whose stats don't reflect their quality.
Yes.
Mixon's at the top of that list. And he always comes on in December. In December, he puts up the numbers that are top 5 overall fantasy pick kind of numbers. And that's a good sign, because it means, because as a running back, as the season goes on, the hits build up, the punishment builds up. He's playing his best football at the end of the season. There is a little thing hovering over Mixon and some of these other running backs that Dalvin Cook, who already made it express that he's going to sit unless he gets a reasonable contract extension. Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, we talked about. Will Mixon hold out? I mean, early in the offseason, there was talk like the Bengals were expecting him to. A lot has changed since then. No signs yet that he will, but just keep that in mind. But otherwise, if you take Mixon in the late first round, early second round, I don't necessarily blame you, because if Burrow elevates this offense and there's just a little more room for him to run, it's still a problem on the offensive line, even though they're getting Jonah Williams. Still some suspect names there. Billy Price, their first round pick in 2018, hasn't exactly worked out and helped improve the interior offensive line. But if things just get a little easier for Joe Mixon, a few more scoring opportunities, because we're not seeing Giovanni Bernard turn this into a running back by committee at this point, then Joe Mixon next year sees, especially if he gets a long-term extension from the Bengals, a new contract, we're talking about him with Kamara and Barkley and Ezekiel Elliott. He has the talent to do that. It's just a question of whether he has this offense around him to allow him to get there.
All right, let's talk about Gio Bernard then, because he's incredibly, and one of those guys, like, we're just never going to see him, get what he could have gotten and maybe should have gotten. Okay, that's fine. What about this role?
Yeah, it's just getting smaller. And they actually signed him to an extension last year They keep him in the organization to be somebody that, look, if Mixon goes down, which he missed some games here and there, Giovanni Bernard is one of the better handcuffs or backup running backs, partially because Cecil turned the page. Poor Rodney Anderson, who we love. Another player, Baker Mayfield misses, right? We love Rodney Anderson, but he just can't stay healthy. And then Travion Williams, and what's going to be interesting to watch here is if the Bengals are thinking, we're just paying money out to DJ Reader and Trey Waynes and some of these other guys, but we're not going to pay a running back. Somebody else can give Joe Mixon $12 million a year or something like that. Then don't they need to see what Travion Williams can do? And if Rodney Anderson's healthy, what he can do, sprinkle them in a little bit more. So maybe that can be a bit of a telegraph of their plans long-term for Joe Mixon, because we're not going to see that deal get done before training camp or this year. So that's something to watch. While the Mixon show is going on, what do they expect to be coming up next season?
They love those Oklahoma backs, that's for sure, in Cincinnati. And with Rodney Anderson, it's just like, oh, man, he can stay healthy. No. Travion Williams is interesting. We've had some debates and discussions. Yeah. I won't say I was as excited about Travion as I was, let's say, Devin Singletary.
Right.
But certainly there's fluidity to his game. There's vision to his game. There's certain things to like about Travion Williams. So I'm at least interested, Bloom, a preseason watch list with no preseason. But, I'll be watching and maybe trying to dig behind the scenes as much as I can about this kid.
Well, he's not as much of a tackle breaker. I think bringing up Singletary is a good name to compare, as Singletary, I think, has a little more short area quickness and ability to break tackles than Williams. What I liked watching Williams, and I'm not saying he's going to get these opportunities that he got in colleges, for a smaller back, when he got up to carry 15, carry 20, then all of a sudden he looked faster, right? So Travion Williams' speed compared to the defense at the beginning of the game, not overwhelming. But at the end of the game, he's still got that engine running as hot as it was at the beginning of the game. The defense, not as much. And then you really saw Travion Williams. You think of it more as a big back, like a Derrick Henry, that's going to strike that death blow after wearing you down the whole game. But Travion Williams was able to do that. So a lot of energy, a lot of intensity, but probably more of a backup running back in the NFL. That being said, backup running backs, when they get opportunities, can make things happen in fantasy leagues.
Making things happen is what AJ Green has done for years. And our man Andrew says, can't wait to hear about some AJ Green. Well, here we go. Because franchise tag deal, they don't work out a long-term deal. Probably his last year in Cincinnati. Although with what they're building with Burrow, if you're Green, like now you're winning. Okay, maybe you want to go somewhere else. That's fine. Maybe that's a different discussion, Bloom. But Burrow with Green equals what for fantasy GMs?
Well, certainly something that can easily exceed his ADP. Again, comparing ADPs. At the end of the 2019 preseason, Green cost you a 6th-round pick. He was already hurt. We knew he was hurt, and he cost you a 6th-round pick. This year, as far as I know, knock on wood, he's healthy, still costing a 6th-round pick. He's one of the greatest to play wide receiver. Maybe it's because he was on the Bengals seats that we don't think of it that way. And he said, after saying he wants that long-term deal, he still said his plan is to play 4 more years and retire a Bengal. Now, I don't know if that means get one of those one-day contracts and come back and retire a Bengal, but at least it shows that there's some meaning to him of being a Bengal after spending his entire career up to this point with the Bengals. And AJ Green is the opposite of a diva, right? So I don't think we're going to see him just mail it in because they didn't give him a long-term deal. He's going to collect I think it's like $17 million. I mean, it's not nothing. But AJ Green is one of the greatest ever to play wide receiver. And when I say that, I mean, like, if you put together a list of the top 50 wide receivers to ever play or top 75 wide receivers to play, he's in consideration to get on that list. We've forgotten that because he's been hurt the last few years. And I get it. Maybe his body's broken, right? Maybe the next time he takes the field, just wait a couple of weeks and we're going to see another lower leg injury, foot injury, and it's just going to follow the same pattern as it has. This is a fantasy philosophy thing, Cecil, right? Like, I'm fine with my fantasy team suffering because I trusted a player like AJ Green to be great. And I'll keep trusting him to be great when it only costs a 6th-round pick. And again, here's the theme. 3rd, 4th-round turn. I can get Odell Beckham, Allen Robinson. I can get Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, I want them all. I don't have enough picks. 6, 7 turn. I can get Marquise Brown. I can get AJ Green in the 6th round. Browns 3 maybe, but 4, 5, 6, 7. These are wide receiver rounds this year. Put that in pen in your draft plan.
You said you wanted Juju. We got to unpack that, but in a couple more episodes. So we'll get there eventually. And Joe Burrow will make the most of AJ Green, and just the realization that you can believe in your quarterback. Talked to David Bruton last night, and it's talking about Peyton Manning and just kind of the difference. And Joe Burrow's not Peyton Manning, although that talent is there for him to be one of the best in the NFL, perhaps fairly quickly. When you believe in your quarterback, it raises everything. So AJ Green has gone from getting it done with scrappy Andy Dalton, and now he has a potential superstar quarterback. So, by the way, Bloom, super quick.
Yeah.
How did you think of this article idea to go back and look at last year's ADP compared to this year's ADP? Because it's a very interesting angle.
Well, it was because, and I've done this in my mind as part of the analysis the last few years, but not exactly something where I formally looked at it. Because I think ADP is very interesting because it's a measure of the hive mind. And ADP is actually the wisdom of the crowd. By the way, the wisdom of the crowd, football guys rankings exercise. You'll have fun with it. Hot or not, but for fantasy football, right? And I think that it shows ADP is distilled down like a poll where you ask all of the serious fantasy football players, what do you think of this player this year? And we can, in a somewhat objective way, say, here's everything we know about a player at that time. And then we can say, does this make sense? Does it make sense that, some of the players I looked at, because I did some things like looking at the DeAndre Hopkins trade and then how it affects the ADP of the Texans receivers, how it affected Hopkins ADP. And does that map to your expectations? It's a way to find values. It's a way to find players. Because really what we're looking for in drafts are players where our estimation of a player's value is different than the hive mind. And if we think the hive mind is too high, we just know to avoid them. And if we think the hive mind is too low, then these are our targets. But without understanding what everybody else is thinking via ADP, then we're not sure how to make those decisions. And then if we can look at what the hive mind thought last year, we can see where maybe they are overweighting certain things or not taking certain things into consideration.
Looking for the cracks. And I'm not talking about your plumber visit yesterday.
Right.
By the way, on Facebook, Sean wants to know, typically rookie quarterbacks struggle. You aren't worried about that with Green. For me, Bloom, personally, I think he's just going to have to throw through it.
Right.
He's what they've got. So rookie quarterbacks will struggle, and that's not going to be any different. Joe Burrow's going to be like every other rookie, but he's in a position where they're not going to fold. Okay, you can't do it. Let's switch. Right. No, they're just keep throwing, kid. Just keep throwing.
He's an intuitive player, right? It's almost like watching Joe Burrow, that the game happens slower for him. It's like Mahomes. The game happens slower for him than the other 21 players on the field because of his calm, because of his ability to see possibilities where other quarterbacks are maybe more frantic thinkers or trying to avoid negative outcomes more than create positive ones. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt until we see him fall flat on his face.
Let's talk about the guys behind AJ Green, including Tyler Boyd, right at the top. And we've got other players, T. Higgins, we'll get to in just a little bit. But we've got to spend quite a bit of time with Boyd, with what he's done. Maybe a dash of John Ross if you want, but let's save Higgins on date and the rest because Boyd is that significant.
Right, and Boyd, on that note, his ADP's actually dropped from last year. So last year at this time, we knew that AJ Green was hurt. We knew that Boyd was going to come in and be the primary target for this team, and he was going around the 5th round. Now you can get him around the 7th. Another receiver. Give me Boyd, too, because Boyd's been one of those guys, and it's tricky, right? Because you might say, well, Boyd is the number one receiver, gets more targets, and that's good. But Boyd's actually been as good or better with AJ Green. With AJ Green also occupying secondaries, occupying defenses. And Tyler Boyd, who admittedly coming out of Pitt, I was not as high as I should have been on him. He's produced through some rough seas last year. Even as this team was basically a dead man walking, just trying to get to the tee times in January, Tyler Boyd still producing. Now you have him in an offense that might be elevated. I think that's really easy. And who maps to the Justin Jefferson role, Cease? Tyler Boyd.
Tyler Boyd. There you have him. And could do great things, of course, with one Joe Burrow. T. Higgins. I mean, you can skip over John Ross if you want. I mean, we know what John Ross can do when he's healthy and score touchdowns. We know that, which, he doesn't stay healthy, and he scores touchdowns when he is healthy. So there you go. There's the hot John Ross take. I really want to talk about T. Higgins. with that size, with the ball tracking ability, with the fact that he uses his frame to box out from those smaller defenders. Like T. Higgins should have been a first-round pick. Reminds me a little bit of the Cortland Sutton thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sutton, like what? And, especially like with the Cowboys taking Van Der Esch, it's like, huh? I thought you were going to take Sutton. And they didn't. And Sutton goes to the second round. T. Higgins, same thing to me. Bloom, rinse, repeat. I love the upside of this kid.
And Burrow has to love this, right? That their priority with the first pick of the second day was to go get T. Higgins.
Aaron Rodgers is looking at that going,
what about me? Yeah, right. Look, Higgins, maybe not this year, but you like the idea of him growing with Burrow. It is that massive catch radius. He's fast enough with his speed. He's not a burner, but he's fast enough with his size to be a handful for any NFL cornerback. And you like this. Sees this Bengals wide receiver group 1 to 5 because you have John Ross. Let's go ahead and handle these guys all at once because, we'll see about injuries. Look, if you don't think AJ Green can stay healthy and you're saying 6th round, I don't care, he's not going to stay healthy, then you should be thinking about one of T. Higgins or John Ross. And look, if we were to make a list of the fastest, quickest wide receivers in the league, John Ross is on that list.
Oh, yeah.
He's electric. His combination of speed and quickness is up there with Tyreek Hill. He doesn't have that dog in him. He doesn't have the consistency of Tyreek Hill, but as far as physically, athletically, unable to be matched up by almost any defensive back in the game, that is John Ross. Inconsistent. For every one he makes, he'll drop one like Ted Ginn. But that element, that tactical element, we saw last year now without Marvin Lewis, who he banged heads with at the beginning, and even though there was some rough times, he came out of the gate really hot for fantasy football. So we'll see. Again, he may be somebody that benefits from this offense. And then Auden Tate, and we've already mentioned him talking about Alan Lazard in the big wide receiver bloodbath a few years ago. Auden Tate will catch anything. That's what's great for T. Higgins is to watch someone like Auden Tate and how he is translated to having that long body, but also the ball skills to activate that catch radius. Auden Tate's doing it. Auden Tate is good. If Auden Tate is your second wide receiver outside off the bench, you have an excellent group of wide receivers. Another reason to like Joe Burrow is the variety of talents, that some experienced, some on the rise. Love this group of wide receivers.
Don't love the group of tight ends.
No.
Which is weird because they have all these wide receivers just falling out of their pockets, and then you think, oh, a security blanket for a young quarterback, CJ Uzomah.
Yeah.
Okay, what? 30 catches if he's healthy? 40 catches maybe?
Yeah, this is a team that it's not necessarily going to be no Tyler Eifert. It's not going to be a team that uses the tight end, I think, a lot in the passing game because they have these great wide receivers, because they have Joe Mixon, they have Jabari Bernard, who's an excellent wide receiver, and then they took, receiver out of the backfield. Drew Sample. I can't ever remember the name of the blocking tight end. Was it McDaniel who took a blocking tight end when he was with the Broncos in the second round?
Richard Quinn,
the mighty Quinn.
Robert's
come
brother.
on without. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, blocking tight end in the second round.
Yeesh.
That's Drew Sample. I don't think he's going to become Will Dissly. This is the one where we turn the page pretty quickly.
Turning the page means turning to Baker the Baby Maker, as it is the preseason watch list here on the Audible. 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on this show. The fate of the Browns lies at the feet of Baker Mayfield. Does he screw it up? Sorry, Browns fans. That's next. All right, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so last year you'll say, well, Baker Mayfield was under so much pressure. It was he didn't have time to make anything happen, didn't have time to throw, and all these sorts of things. They fixed that, and then some. The Browns went out of their way. Great for them, right? They got a number 1 overall pick at quarterback. They went out of their way to put better offensive linemen, better weapons, although we'll talk about Austin Hooper in a little bit, around young Baker Mayfield to correct things, to get things back on the right track. I know it's an interesting year in Bloom and an odd year, but I'm not seeing Baker Mayfield commercials every other commercial on TV, which I always ranted again last year because I was like, dude, come on, prove something and, get your money. That's fine. But I don't need to see you doing, 6 different commercials nationally. So Baker Mayfield seems a little bit more focused. This is the preseason watch list. It's the Audible, 32 teams, 32 episodes, every skill position player that you want to know about. Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom, starting with Baker Mayfield. Does he bounce back? Do the Browns' efforts pay off in a better Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, the story of the Browns this year, Cease, right? It's like trying to win back your lost love. In this case, the fan base, Oh, I've been working out more and eating right, Oh, I went to counseling and now emotionally I'm a lot better. This year it's like I've been reading more books. I've been trying to upgrade my intelligence and my knowledge. They get Kevin Stefanski, who, according to some reports, was actually some within the organization wanted Stefanski last year whenever they promoted Freddie Kitchens. Well, that was a folly, to say the least. We all got over our skis on that, including Baker Mayfield. Browns fans, Browns team, reading the press clippings too much. You hadn't really accomplished anything yet. And we saw the bottom drop out. And maybe part of the problem also was continuity between the head coach, which, Kitchens was. There was a lot of talk. Sees Bob Wiley, remember the belly, going on the record after he was pushed out, saying Kitchens was hired because he was small, because Dorsey knew that he could kind of control him, right? That's not a good model for an organization. Now you have Stefanski and Andrew Berry, who, time together previously, seeing eye to eye, a common vision. And this vision is an offense. Just look at the Minnesota offense, and I know Stefanski has adopted, and that's more of a Kubiak offense. But then you look at the personnel, and you also assume rational coaching, and you think, what's going to work for Baker Mayfield? It should look like the Minnesota offense.
Mm-hmm.
You go get Jack Conklin. You take Wills in the first round. These are going to be guys that can step in right away, establish the run. It's going to be a running back offense, a play action passing offense, keeping Baker Mayfield in structure, right? That's what you want.
Kubiak's all about bootlegs, rollouts, make a high-low read,
Yep.
and you can read high, read low, and take off to run if both are covered.
And that's not exactly the kind of quarterback you take with a number 1 overall pick.
That's who you take in the 4th round. That's when you take Kirk Cousins.
Right. But it'll work. Mayfield should be better. Maybe not for fantasy. His ADP has dropped from where he was when we were so excited about him last year. He's still around quarterback 15 or so, which I'm not taking him there. But he can be more efficient and help this team be more competitive than last year when he was floundering out there. But and this is where we need Matt Waldman, like popping in the little window. If you're watching the video, it'd be like, hey, look who the backup quarterback is. Baker, you better play well.
You better play well, because it's Case Keenum, or Case Keesum, as John always said. Who's that guy? What? Oh, yeah, him. Keenum comes there. And with Baker, to maybe tie a bow on it and to jump towards Keenum Bloom, he'll be around 20, for fantasy quarterbacks. If they run this offense true to Shanahan Kubiak form, then Baker Mayfield will be around the 20th fantasy quarterback. Maybe that's 17 instead of 20, but somewhere around there. That sounds fair. Doesn't sound like someone I get real excited for fantasy-wise, but that sounds fair.
Yeah, it's fair. But Keenum, Kevin Stefanski already knows what Keenum. Who took the Vikings to one game from the Super Bowl? Was it Kirk Cousins? No, it was Case Keenum. Case Keenum had his best year as a pro by far in that Minnesota offense. So that's something interesting to watch here as the Browns. Probably you're not going to see them bail on Mayfield, even if it's a rough year this year. But certainly what Mayfield does this year to show how he's going to intersect with the future of this franchise is important, because they have a backup that is a known quantity, which is a very interesting signing.
How else do we know this is going to be a run-heavy offense? Besides the fact they have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, they also got Andy Janovich.
Yeah.
We won't talk about him much in the preseason watch list, but it's important to note when you bring in that type of fullback with Nick Chubb, best running back in the game, I could make that argument easily with Nick Chubb. And then Kareem Hunt thrown in there in his role. That's flex worthy. And if something happens to Chubb, then Hunt has that ability to be the best running back in football.
Right.
So the Browns are stacked when it comes to running backs. And we've seen this before in a Shanahan Kubiak offense when it was guys like Mike Anderson, Tatum Bell, both getting around 1,000 yards rushing. Now I think Chubb does more than that. He'll be the 1,400 yard guy. And then Hunt will be the 700-yard guy, something like that. But Hunt also will be the receiving back. Still a lot of fantasy value in both these backs.
It's a running back offense, right? I mean, it's an offense that maximizes the value of the running back, and they have good running backs. If you have a pick in the late first round, you're thinking about Nick Chubb on your target list. This is an offense that is even more designed to maximize his value than what we had last year. He was incredible last year. You know, if the team could just be more competitive, Nick Chubb can start having those Derrick Henry kind of games where at the end of the game, he's stepping on your face on the way to a 70-yard touchdown to ice the game, or otherwise just be somebody that the defense can't really account for. And then Kareem Hunt. Isn't it easy to picture Kareem Hunt, not quite as dynamic as Dalvin Cook in terms of short area quickness and things like that, but just as effective? If you give Kareem Hunt Dalvin Cook's touches from last year, Kareem Hunt's going to be 90, 95, or maybe 100% of Dalvin Cook. Now, there is that issue of Chubb's going to be the lead back, and Hunt is going to be, maybe not truly a change of pace because it's kind of a committee, and Hunt might not get the number of catches he got last year. So Hunt in PPR leagues was an every week play once he showed up last year. The team retained him. He had an off-field incident in the offseason. Team stuck with him through that. The word from Mary Kay Cabot is they're very happy with what he's showing, that he's going to redeem himself. He's going to stay on the right path now. But as you said, if Chubb gets hurt, Hunt becomes a league winner. But even if Chubb stays healthy, just like we talked about J.K. Dobbins on the Baltimore episode, Hunt might only need 9, 12 touches a game if 3 or 4 of those are receptions to at least be worthy of a flex or running back 2 designation. I think it's going to be very difficult for defenses to deal with these 2 running backs. And let's also remember, in the offseason, Kareem Hunt getting some training as a wide receiver. Skipping ahead to wide receiver seats, they don't have a number 3 wide receiver set right now.
Right.
It could be Kareem Hunt. Now, that's a way for both Chubb and Hunt to exceed ADP while they're both staying healthy.
Yeah, and Stefanski's creative enough to do that because he's, stolen stuff from Gary Kubiak, but he's not a, just absolute, it has to be this system this way.
He's not Rich Gangarello.
Very good. Very good. Sigmund Bloom. Behind Chubb and Hunt, you want to talk about Dontrell Hilliard? Any of these guys?
No, they don't have that number 3 running back. So no, Scangarello's with the Eagles now, by the way. So hey, if one of these guys were to go down, we'd be interested to see who got the call up, and to see who makes the team. But there's not any talents we're excited about on this roster behind them.
Right, and if one of those guys goes down, they'll just use more of the other one.
Right,
in my opinion, that's the way it will be. How about the way it'll be for ODB and Jarvis Landry? Looking over at Cincinnati saying, oh, man, why didn't we have a quarterback like that at LSU when we were there? We had to catch passes from Zach Mettenberger. But now ODB looking for that bounce back. I totally want to be in Cleveland. Anytime those reports come out, like, oh, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to be here. I totally want to be. You want to leave Cleveland. We know that. You ain't got to lie to kick it, Craig. So ODB, Jarvis Landry in a more efficient, contained Baker Mayfield, less wild Baker Mayfield, that still can be productive, maybe not overly productive. And I point people back to the Shanahan offense with Ed McCaffrey and Rod Smith, both 1,000-yard receivers in the same season. So is that what we're looking for Landry and Beckham?
These are both really interesting guys to dissect from a fantasy profile outlook perspective. Let's take Landry first. And of course, I'm going to continue to bring up ADP comparisons because there was so much optimism around this offense last year going into the season. Landry was a 6th, 7th round pick, and he's still a 6th, 7th round pick, even though he overachieved last year while this offense was having trouble getting the gear shift out of neutral. And he did have a hip surgery in February this offseason, so we're going to watch how he's coming back from that. He was playing through it. He was trying to avoid the surgery, but gave in the offseason. Decided it was too much. I think maybe it was the Pro Bowl where he felt it and said, nah, I got to have this surgically corrected. Maybe not my top receiver pick around that time, but again, if you get Jarvis Landry in the 6th, 7th round, wide receiver value abounds. Odell Beckham. Now, going into last year, Odell Beckham's had his injury issues, but every time Odell Beckham was on the field with Eli Manning, he was producing like a top 3, top 5 receiver from the get-go. Even when he missed his first training camp with a hamstring injury, missed part of that season, as soon as he showed up, he is dominating for fantasy football. And he was a first-round pick last year, late first-round pick, maybe early second round. enter this Browns season going like the Hindenburg, the offense. Beckham struggled because of that, but Beckham was hurt the entire year. We heard about the groin injury. He was playing with a hernia. And like our good friend Matt Harmon, his reception perception, showing that Odell Beckham's numbers separating on certain routes, separating versus different coverages weren't as good last year. Now, did Odell Beckham just become not as good as football last year? Like his skills are eroding. How old is Beckham? I don't even know. 26, 27, 28. I can't know off the top of my head. Is that our theory? Well, Odell Beckham's already in the decline phase of his career. Or is it that he was playing hurt? I'm going to go with he was playing hurt. Now we see how he fits in this offense. Last year, Cecil, you have Stephon Diggs. Because what is this? It's the play action, right? Who's the deep target on the play action calls? Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham may score 6, 7, 8, 9 long touchdowns this year. I mean, he was doing it with Eli Manning. Now he has an offense that by design creates opportunities for the number one receiver to do that. And he, as it is, was crushing those opportunities in an offense and a quarterback. I'm not going to say Baker Mayfield after the excitement last year. Baker Mayfield, what can he do for Odell Beckham? We're not as excited, okay? But I am excited about him being in this role in this offense after seeing what Stephon Diggs did in it. Now you can get Odell Beckham in the third round. So just between, I guess, some of it's the optimism about the Browns, some of it is people thinking that his skills are eroding or otherwise he's not as good at football as we thought he was. Odell Beckham in the third round of fantasy drafts? Yes.
Yes, please, and thank you. And I'll mention opportunities because you mentioned the play action passing. When this offense is ran as close to perfection as possible, it's nearly unstoppable. So are they going to pepper him with targets? Yeah, he'll lead the team in targets, but he's not going to get peppered. But when he is targeted, it's because it's a play action, run fake, wide open ODB touchdown. So third round, yes, please. Let's talk a little Jarvis Landry and what that means for him being opposite of ODB.
Yeah, he's more the possession target, although he's making some downfield catches. I think it's just you don't see him with the opportunity to destroy his ADP the way that Beckham could. Again, we've talked about guys like Marquise Brown and AJ Green around the same area of the draft as Landry. So while Landry's going to give you that high, solid floor, assuming the hip isn't an issue, Green, Brown, some of the other guys around that part of the draft are going to give Devontae Parker, I think, will give you more ceiling. So it just depends on your team construction, your draft philosophies. But still, these are two good receivers. After that, a little not so much.
Yeah, after that, it's interesting. I mean, Rashard Higgins was out there forever. Nobody signed him, and then he comes back to the Browns. Donovan Peoples-Jones, very interesting Michigan receiver, picked up in the 6th round, run after the catch guy, raw, certainly, but has moves, has some savvy to his game. It's like more waiting to see if Peoples-Jones can get it. And then Higgins is just kind of he's the one CSU receiver that's not working out. As we talked about yesterday with the Michael Gallup and Preston Williams and all this CSU represent. It's not really exciting here behind those big two.
No, exciting in the sense that there's a real position battle here. And that's why, again, the idea of Kareem Hunt, and if we hear the Cleveland beat reporters with the Morse code spelling out, Kareem Hunt is working as the number 3 receiver, because they might not be able to come right out and tell us that. But there's not that player that's obviously the number 3 receiver for this team. Not that they're going to be using a third receiver a lot in this offense, but Higgins has the chemistry with Mayfield. Remember, Higgins right away had like 2 catches for 40 yards and then got hurt week 1 last year, and then we barely heard from him after that. New regime, a chance to redeem himself. And he has that chemistry history with Baker Mayfield. You mentioned, they've got Damian Ratley. They've got Jamon Moore. They've got Taywan Taylor. Remember, they threw a late pick or a bump in the late part of the draft to get Taywan Taylor, a pretty good deep ball receiver. Didn't do anything last year, but still on the roster. So we'll watch how this number 3 receiver situation sorts itself out. It is wide open, but it's also one of the least valuable number 3 receiver jobs in the league, with that asterisk that if it is Kareem Hunt, that totally changes our outlook for him.
Well, we're Steelers fans, but we hope the Browns can be better, right? We like Browns fans for the most part. Our dear friend Matt Waldman. So when this team in the offseason, they go get Jack Conklin, I was like, ooh. Yeah. And then in the draft, they get Jedrick Wills. I was like, ooh. But when they got Austin Hooper in free agency, I was like, huh? Like, what? Yeah. For the old Ricky Waters. For who? For what? Okay, David Njoku's still there for now. And then you go out in the draft, you get Harrison Bryant. Okay, what are they doing at tight end here? Because it's very odd.
They're building a group where they can run a lot of 2 tight end sets, which again matches the MO that we expect with Stefanski. But yeah, Austin Hooper, from a fantasy perspective, how much of what he created statistically was him, and how much it was that Atlanta Falcons tight end role with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley really being the priority for defenses. And if you think it's the role in Atlanta, then Hayden Hurst should interest you. A little preview of NFC South preseason watch list. So I'm not going for Hooper. They're probably going to keep Njoku. He wants a trade. I'm not sure. He's actually somewhat cheap. I mean, the 5th-year option for tight ends is pretty cheap. So they exercise the 5th-year option around $6 million, even though he hasn't been staying healthy. Remember, he's really young, really athletic. Certainly, he's a threat to Hooper, and we're looking something more like, as we've been talking about in the chat room, like a Rudolph Irv Smith situation there, where neither of them really rise above. And then Harrison Bryant, Matt Baldwin favorite, can do some things as a move tight end and H-back, can keep them even if Njoku isn't part of this team long term. Bryant will be. Hooper signed to a 4-year deal. So they're investing. They're showing us what position is going to be important in their offense, even if it isn't going to create important players for fantasy football.
Important episodes of the Audible are the preseason watch list, as I sound like Yoda. Maybe I should just sound like Baby Yoda. How about this? Important talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. The preseason watch list continues. Will we be heartbroken from the Steelers again? That's next. All right. Let's go on in 3, 2, and 1. We're back, and he's back. Ben Roethlisberger back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Does that cure everything? Is that the cure-all? Is that the elixir, the magic elixir for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom hope so. And yes, I just went third person on you because it's a Steelers episode, Bloom, so it's going to get weird and it's going to get frosty, and we're going to talk about Ben. What's left? We've seen Eli Manning's done. Phillip Rivers looks done. When people say to me, well, wait, you're a Steelers fan and you're down on the Steelers, but Ben's coming back this year, I'm like, well, what is Ben? What is Ben? Can you tell me what Ben is? Because if Ben's like Eli and Phillip, he's done. If Ben's not, then yes, there's some excitement there. But is Ben that savior that Steelers Nation wants him to be?
Well, I'll buy into it, at least from an emotional, mental health standpoint, right? We all need a little boost. We're neurotic, but this year, at least we can say, hey, that defense, that offense with Ben Roethlisberger, we'll see. Hey, in a one-game showdown with a Baltimore, who they played to overtime last year without Ben, in a one-game showdown with Kansas City, in a one-game showdown with Tennessee, with the Patriots, the somewhat mortal Patriots, so they got Cam Newton. I'm excited. From a fantasy football standpoint, Roethlisberger's around quarterback 17, 18 now. Okay, I mean, there's a lot of skepticism built into that. It's right. Is his elbow going to be the same? Is his ability to lead the offense down the field going to be the same? But that's more than baked in, and Cecil will get to. It's more than baked into the other players' ADP in this offense. It seems like there's maybe too much pessimism. It was hard. Cecil, the worst quarterback play in the league last year. Steelers probably won't have that this year as long as Roethlisberger's elbow shows up.
Yeah, as long as Roethlisberger elbow shows up and then takes advantage of the talent around him. So Big Ben, okay, stay healthy, stay upright. I don't really want to talk about Mason.
No. Can they sign Colin Kaepernick? I mean, I know that I grew up in Washington County, south of Pittsburgh, and I know maybe Kaepernick wouldn't be the most popular signing among some of the Steelers fan base. It's exactly what they need. They won't do it, though. So we have more Mason Rudolph, and maybe Duck makes the team. I'll give you... You're
not mentioning Paxton Lynch.
Right, Paxton Lynch. But no, didn't they sign... oh, man. There's a fifth quarterback now. It's escaping me. Hold on. Was it JT Barrett? Is that who they brought in? Am I crazy, Cease?
You're totally crazy.
Or is Barrett with I'm sorry. JT Barrett. JT Barrett. So maybe JT Barrett can be that running quarterback with the defense that allows them to win games instead of the quarterback play from the backups last year, dragging them to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, here's my worry, though, is they think Mason Rudolph's some sort of answer. And they'll be like, well, if Ben's done, we're fine. We got Mason Rudolph.
Yeah.
You got Bumpkus.
Nope.
You got nothing.
Well done. Yoy.
Yoinks. All right. James Conner, going to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Like, what's the excitement level there with James Conner? Because we can go to the backs behind him, and we will. And I think I'm a little more excited about Anthony McFarland than you are, Bloom. So we can debate we started our friendship debating and discussing what Amos Zaraway compared to Willie Parker. Yeah. So there you go. Here we are debating Steelers running backs again. Well, let's get the top guy out of the way and James Conner and what he can do if healthy.
So again, looking at this paradigm of last year's ADP versus this year's ADP, because in August last year, and a sign that you should run from the Steelers was I was getting excited about both Conner and Juju Smith-Schuster at ADP. Maybe if you had to pick around the 1-2 turn, you would take both of them. Because what's the Steelers offense going to be able to do? It could be able to take off. And we all know how that story turned out. But James Conner, anytime he's been the lead back for the Steelers, including last year with some help from receiving ability, receiving numbers, has been a running back one for fantasy football, a relevant fantasy running back. And that was reflected, even though he hasn't been able to stay healthy, that was reflected in that late first round ADP last year. This year, can I have 3 third-round picks instead of a first and a second? And maybe 3 in the fourth, because you can get James Conner in the third round now. So from the first round to the third round. Now, what has changed? Well, maybe Ben Roethlisberger's elbow. Maybe the offensive line without Mike Munchak isn't as good. Maybe bringing in Anthony McFarland signals that they're not going to treat him as a lead back. But it's the last year of his contract as a rookie. Probably not going to bring him back. If he can stay healthy, though, he can set himself up for a better payday next year. And he is yet to be on the field. Now, sometimes he's not on the field, but when he's on the field, he's someone you want in your fantasy lineup. So if you don't take a running back in the first 2 rounds, Conner is someone that can make up for that in the third round. I don't expect the team to go full running back by committee, but see, as you were alluding to, there are some interesting talents behind him.
Yeah, and I don't expect the team to ever know what to do with Jalen Samuels. I just ever. You have this amazing talent. You have a guy that, he plays 7 different positions at NC State, and you're just like, I don't know, run the ball. Like, put him in the slot. Like, come on, let him be a return man. Like, let Jalen Samuels touch the ball. They're never going to do it, Bloom. So let's break. And, there's Benny Snell. I remember the days we were ruining the Benny Snell pick and thinking, like, why isn't that Darrell Henderson? And now you look at the Rams and McVay being like, we're just giving the ball to everybody. So there you go. Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels. There's Anthony McFarland, the little guy. Now he has a dash of Phillip Lindsay. He's not going to have back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. But I always felt he had a dash of Phillip Lindsay to his game because he's capable of running inside. Now, he's not a pile pusher, and that has to be the difference. But he's not afraid. He's not a guy that just bounces everything outside. So I respect that about McFarland as a smaller back, as a speedy back. We can go back and forth about his usage and what they'll do and maybe try to use him as that receiving back, what have you. But here's this. Well, there's Kareth White, right?
Yeah.
There's Trey Edmonds. We can talk about them. They're more exciting the further you go down the depth chart. Although for the Steelers, they'll be like, nah, those guys, nah.
So there's a numbers game here. I mean, Edmonds is the least exciting, but he can contribute the most on special teams. So I guess they're going to keep 5 running backs, but that still means somebody good or somebody that's useful or that they invested in is getting cut. Edmonds, we can get out of the way. There's not a handcuff to Conner. I think that you're going to see if Conner goes down. So I'll go least exciting to most exciting. All right. Least exciting, Benny Snell, a professional, a running back's running back, but doesn't add anything in terms of burst, acceleration to his touches. But they liked him a lot last year. I think he showed that he's going to be a replacement level NFL running back. He's probably not going to get cut, though, and they would look to him to be like an early down back. Next, and this is my personal opinion. Now, I like Kareth White a lot. He's got acceleration. He's got speed. I think he showed last year that the Bears let one get away. Remember, he was with Devin Singletary, maybe playing in Singletary's shadow the way that Pollard was in Henderson's shadow in Memphis. Antonio Gibson in both their shadow. White is a player, can add a kick return excitement, can add speed out of the backfield. I think you're going to see him probably get released and do something elsewhere. Samuels, as you said, sees knee injury last year, wasn't quite the same, looked like a different running back, I believe, as a rookie. Steelers, hopefully, Finkner adding Matt Canada, more on that in a second, will have some pre-snap motion. Do some things with versatility. Actually try to put the defense at a disadvantage with personnel sets and formations. Get them to declare themselves. Samuel can help with a lot of that stuff. Samuel's a great receiver. Keep him a Wildcat quarterback. If Roethlisberger gets hurt, just put Samuel as a Wildcat quarterback. That was fun, right? I'd like Samuels a lot, maybe as a deep dynasty stash, or when you see him get dropped, especially if the Steelers release him, you see him get dropped. Just keep your eye on him. And then we get to McFarland. Speed. You saw him do it against Ohio State a few years ago. And the other thing is here that Matt Canada coached him. So Matt Canada made the Pitt offense look exciting, okay? I hope the Steelers treat him as a consultant and let him have more input in play design and the playbook. And I would have to think that Canada is going to know how to set up McFarland's for success and add that vertical speed chunk play threat from the backfield, maybe more to like the tune of 6-8 touches a game. Not a threat to James Conner as a starter, but if James Conner goes down and then you put like a McFarland Snell backfield in there and McFarland breaks some long runs, maybe that's something you can't put back in the bottle. So a lot of talents, a lot of different kind of talents. Not sure what the Steelers' plan is going to be there. I don't expect it to be a big threat to James Conner's opportunity to begin the season, but if Conner misses time, it could be a threat when he does come back.
You are excited about Ben Roethlisberger to a certain level, right, Bloom? The emotional, mental health, all that kind of stuff. That has aided your excitement for Juju. I think we're not at opposing ends.
Yeah.
Because I see people like, Juju's going to explode and onto the scene. And Juju's going to be like a mid-range or low-range wide receiver 2 for me. Not necessarily excited. When you're talking Odell Beckham Jr. in the 3rd round, exciting. Yeah. When you're talking Juju Smith-Schuster, what's he going around the same spot?
Yeah.
Not as excited.
Not excited.
To me, but you seem to be maybe a little bit more optimistic.
Well, so again, Juju, late 1st, early 2nd round pick last year, 3rd, 4th round pick this year. What changed? Terrible quarterback play, and he was hurt last year. There's also some worry. The negative case against Juju was, as a number 1 receiver without Antonio Brown out there, how's he going to do against number 1 receivers outside? Well, guess what? The plan is to play him in the slot. And the Chase Claypool pick, who I think Chase Claypool should be more like an Evan Ingram kind of player, but that also, they have James Washington who can play outside, Deontay Johnson who can play outside. If Juju stays in the slot, because what Juju missed last year, other than just not being healthy, Ben Roethlisberger extends plays. He and Juju have that thing. That's when you get the 97-yard touchdown. The other thing I think Juju has going for him is Roethlisberger is not afraid or against giving a guy 180 targets. Just that's my guy. I'm going to force the ball to him. He forced the ball to Antonio, and we saw what happened. Okay? In this season, with no offseason, with a minuscule amount of padded practices compared to what we've seen going into a season. Again, I'm excited about Rodgers to Adams. I'm excited about Cousins to Thielen. I'm excited about Ben to Juju. I think this is going to be one of those situations where when the bullets are flying, Roethlisberger's barely played with Deontay Johnson. He's barely played with James Washington. He hasn't played with Chase Claypool. He hasn't played with Eric Ebron. I think that Juju has that high ceiling in terms of targets, in terms of execution. Larger issue here, Cecil, Steelers fans. The Steelers don't pay players like Juju Smith-Schuster. And what I mean by that is Smith, he's going to get $20 million a year next year, assuming the cap at least inches up, maybe not $20 million. The point is the Steelers don't pay out top of the market contracts. Which is not what they do. It's last year for Smith-Schuster. Maybe, probably, the pick of Chase Claypool signals they might be planning for that future.
Yeah. Well, so let's go down that list. And Deontay Johnson is a player that we talk about a player I'm excited about. It's him because it is truly tip of the iceberg with what he can do. He could be what Emmanuel Sanders should have been for the Steelers when he was there, but he was also buried on the depth chart, and some guy named Antonio Brown emerged there. Deontay Johnson is that guy. James Washington there with that ball tracking ability. Sure, let's see more. You mentioned Chase Claypool. We still going to talk about Deion Kane? Like, there's some guys we get to. You just get to the name, and you're like, I remember when I was excited about him. There's some interesting names, certainly, and the Steelers have done a great job. The Limas Swede, Troy Edwards days are long gone, where they actually know and find wide receiver talent.
And they have a type. Deontay Johnson fit into that. Emmanuel Sanders, Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster. savvy, route running, speed, acceleration, winning at the catch point. Deontay Johnson had some rough seas at times last year, but when you look at what he did with that quarterback play, we're not making any excuses for Deontay Johnson because he actually rose above as the season went on. Now, he's more, I think, 7th, 8th, 9th round. If Juju Smith-Schuster is the 1 and 2 and 3 target for Roethlisberger, maybe Deontay Johnson underachieves a bit, but what he showed as a rookie portends big things in his future. You have James Washington, and James Washington, isn't James Washington turning out to be exactly the player that we expected him to be? Not a burner, but can make plays downfield, win at the catch point, very steady. He's a good player. It just happens that he plays with Juju and Deontay Johnson, and they have some players at tight end that can make some plays. Chase Claypool, I don't love it when your second round pick, he's great on special teams. He's going to be a great gunner.
Right.
Okay, he's got size and speed. Not somebody that I want matched up against athletic, fast, long NFL outside corners. I want him matched up against the slot corner. I want him matched up against the tight end. I want him in, navigating the middle of the field. But the Steelers like what they saw there. It can keep Juju in the slot this year, help with that. And long term, we'll see. Adds another vertical threat. This is going back maybe more to the Lima Swede kind of pick, but more like what Ben Roethlisberger would ask for if you let him fill in the blanks of the traits. And then you mentioned Deion Kane. I think they might have got away with one whenever the Colts were not happy with Kane. And Kane, as a ceiling player, is excellent, even though he was a third-day pick, Clemson receiver, maybe a little bit underused there. So I like the Steelers developing a wide receiver like him, especially with the possibility that Juju moves on, and that allows them to have a spot, somebody actually play and contribute, or if there's injuries, depth is more needed this year. Deion Kane's interesting.
Yeah. Our guy, Jay, chimes in the chat room. They got to have one of the biggest pass catcher units in the league. Reminds me of, Jacksonville when they had, Reggie Williams and our guy, Dr. Roxo, Matt Jones. So I haven't had to say Dr. Roxo in a while. So there you go. Let's move to those tight ends. And there is Eric Ebron. There's Vance McDonald still kicking around as well. But Ebron's the one to focus on, Bloom. If he is focused, good things could abound for the Steelers.
Yeah. Real quick on the right receivers before we tie a bow on that. Ryan Switzer trying to make the team here as a slot receiver. So
he's no Hunter Renfrow.
No. And Anthony Johnson, you remember how productive he was in college. Amara Darboh, former third-round pick. Side Blacknall. Steelers actually got a lot of players from XFL. Oh, here's the neurotic part, Cease. This is me laying on the couch, which I'm about to record with Adam Harstad, and saying, as soon as I heard they signed Eric Ebron, which again is more of a Roethlisberger special, give me a big guy, red zone and things like that. I'm just picturing Cease with a game on the line, probably against Baltimore. They're going to target Ebron. And when that ball's in the air, I'm going to hide my face. I can't like a horror movie. We have to look between your fingers. That's going to be me when they target Ebron with the game on the line. Underachiever, but remember they took him over. Detroit did over Odell Beckham. I think over Aaron Donald too. Am I remembering that correctly? Anyway, here's the point. Ebron's going to be used. They gave him like $6 million a year. Enough to be fantasy relevant, I don't know. Maybe the number one target in the red zone. Not necessarily to the tune of what he did with Andrew Luck when he had like 13 touchdowns, but that's enough. If you're the number one target in the red zone, you're a tight end. That's enough to make you fantasy relevant. I'm not drafting Ebron. I hope it ends up being a story with a happy ending. But I'm telling you, Cease, the moment they signed him, I flashed forward to some gut-wrenching moment when they targeted him. And exactly when the game's on the line, you target anyone but him.
See, our man K1's got you on the couch now, Sig. He says, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's like Jesse James reaching at the ball out.
No, not him. And, Vance McDonald's there, and I'm just like, no, he's never going to stay healthy and do what he's supposed to do. So it's all on Eric Ebron.
Yeah.
Congrats.
And I think that's what the Ebron signing signifies.
Would they put Claypool there?
I hope so, but I don't know. They're training him as an outside receiver. So Claypool in that role is, I think,
that's much more exciting.
Yeah, it's what's going to unlock his talent in the NFL. I hope they have the visionary
Darren Waller. Make him Darren Waller, man.
Right. And they, by the way, they signed Dax Raymond, who I liked, as undrafted free agent. I think the Bears had him. So there's a tight end that got away from the Bears. And Zach Gentry. Gentry was a former option quarterback. So again, if Roethlisberger goes down, maybe Gentry could be the quarterback. They took him in the 5th round last year, a Michigan guy that they're developing. So a few other names there. It's a Steelers show, Cease.
It is a Steelers show, and is the preseason watch list. It is 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you could give a damn about, we talk about on this show. Before we're out of here, Bloom.
Yeah.
I had another movie idea last night on the air. Okay, so get this. Old guys, retired, still think they could play. Think TO, think whatever. COVID hits a team, and they have to go get the old guys. COVID hits a team pretty hard, and they have to go get that old quarterback. They have to go get Terrell Owens. They have to go get Des Bryant, or they have to go get, Calvin Johnson. Something like that. So I needed a name. I didn't have the name. I had the concept down. Like, imagine being the old guy. You're supposedly washed up. You still train. You still send out videos. You still text your old coaches, but no, you're not getting any bites. You're not getting any bites. And then a pandemic hits the team, and they give you that call.
Yeah.
See, be like Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians is going to have a COVID squad.
Right.
Away from the facility.
Everyone
be like Bruce Arians.
Is that what they called it when it was Sly? And so here's so for some reason,
that's exactly what Nick Ferguson said last night. He's like, it's like the Expendables for football. And I'm like, exactly.
Go. That's intuitive. Here's my idea that just popped into my head. So superhero movie, but instead Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy decide, well, nobody else is going to save this world. So we have to use the superpowers we've been using to make kids happy to save the world.
We're actually real.
Yeah.
So, I need a name for that football movie, though, because I
think about it. I'll let it bounce around.
Dude. I could see it. Imagine some team, because like I've always said, if I'm the Broncos, I take Brett Rippon and I say, you made the team, now stay away from us.
Yep.
And just work out on your own. And here's our playbook. And here's everything we're doing. Go through the practice like we do. Here's your Zoom call. Here's blah, blah, blah. And just stay away, because that's what Bruce Arians is doing. And don't more people need to be like Bruce Arians, Bloom?
In general, yes. He is refreshing. He's everything that if we could pick one NFL coach to hang out with, it would probably be Andy Reid. But if we could pick one NFL coach to, be a spirit animal leader in terms of the energy that he gives off. Yeah, you got to love Bruce Arians. Very excited to see what happens with him. Glad that he's going to get a chance. Because I think after we're doing the Tampa Bay episode, you got to do a radio spot. See, this is exciting. We're talking football. We're back. It's a preseason watch list. Football's back. Let's do it.
Football is back. He is Sigmund Bloom. I am Cecil Lammey. We certainly appreciate each and every one of you out there for watching. And I will quote one of my favorite YouTube channels, Casually Comics, and Sasha when she says, now do all the normal YouTube things, like, comment, share, subscribe, all those sorts of things. So yes, we appreciate you all for helping us grow our YouTube channel. Obviously, the imprint we have in the podcasting world has been huge and outstanding, and we love you guys. We love each other. We love football. It is the Audible. He's Sigmund. I'm Cecil. We are the Audible. Everyone out there, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned and stay frosty.